My name is Tony Robinson. I'm the Regional Administrator for FEMA Region 6, and I'd like to thank you all for having FEMA here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2017 hurricane season, primarily focusing on the Hurricane Harvey response and what we did here in Region 6, but also a little about our partnership with the National Weather Service. So I'd like to start this morning by asking, if you're in the National Weather Service Southern Region, would you please stand? If you're in a Region 6 weather forecast office or any weather forecasting office, River Forecast Center, would you please stand? Would you all give a round of applause to these individuals? It's not often I get to thank them in public, but they really are an integral part of our emergency management partnership. One of the first calls we make out of our Regional Response Coordination Center is to the Southern Region to ask for somebody to come in to our office to start working that coordination with us so we can do the pre-planning. So a little bit about the graphics here, and this ties into what Louis was talking about, is we were looking at August 21st, and the forecast there was looking for a remnant low outside of the Yucatan Peninsula, and we were talking about potential for a tropical storm or maybe a low Category 1 hurricane striking the coast of Texas. That was the official forecast. But because of that relationship we had with the National Weather Service, we were able to get Chief Kidd from the Texas Division of Emergency Management, Jim Wascom from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness from Louisiana on the phone and start talking about what are the potential worst case scenarios. Because not only were we worried about the impacts on the Texas coast, but if we recall during the whole hurricane season, we were also worried about the pump capacity in the city of New Orleans to be able to handle even a heavy rainfall event. So really concerned about what are those potential impacts, what do we need to be planning for as emergency management partners. And knowing that that coordination with the Weather Service, the Hurricane Center, the state of Texas, the state of Louisiana, and FEMA Region 6 was vital to be prepared and to be ready for whatever the anticipated event may have brought to bear. We also can't stress enough the importance of those weather forecast offices and that relationship with the local government. At the end of the day, in both Texas and Louisiana, the local government officials, whether that be a county judge, whether that be a mayor, whether that be a parish president, they really have the primary responsibility for making those key decisions. So those relationships are vital, that when they're looking to make critical decisions, in some cases could get them unelected, that they've got somebody sitting across the table that knows the dilemmas that they face. So a little bit of a timeline of events. Once we started talking about what the potential impacts could be, on the 23rd of August, the state of Texas activated their Emergency Operations Center. The governor issued his state disaster declaration, and we activated our FEMA Regional Response Coordination Center, which included reps at both the State Operations Center and at our Regional Response Coordination Center from the National Weather Service. Based on what they were telling us, we began to pre-position and move commodities and teams. By August 24th in Seguin, Texas, we had a staging area set up with state and federal assets, and then Harvey made landfall on August 25th. Based on some of the data that we'd already been able to ascertain from the Weather Service, the governor made his request for a presidential disaster declaration, and the president, within about 6 hours, was able to turn around a presidential disaster declaration based on what we knew would be the catastrophic impacts of that storm. And some of the things that we did, because of the types of damages we knew would be incurred, the president went ahead and did a cost share adjustment, which some people say, what's that got to do with anything? That cost share adjustment for emergency protective measures really did enable local governments to start making financial decisions on being able to take very proactive emergency protective measures. Hurricane Harvey, obviously, for us was 3 events in one. We had a major hurricane making landfall down in Rockport, Texas. We had catastrophic flooding in major metro area of Houston. And then we had another tropical storm and severe flooding event in the Beaumont-Port Arthur area, and another landfall into Louisiana, which had impacts in Calcasieu, Lake Charles as well. And it created a lot of challenges for us, not only for the wind and the rain, but it really caused logistics challenges for us to be able to move in the air or over the road. For the Beaumont-Port Arthur area, dealing with our river forecast centers, we quickly knew that the best way to get resources into Beaumont-Port Arthur was to bring them in from Louisiana and have Louisiana serve Texans for the first several days until we could get the roadways clear. A couple of the tools that we really looked at were HURVAC, the National Hurricane Center, the slosh models, the surge products, wind warning and watches, and river gauge reports. Very critical tools to us. But really, I'll go back again, the most important tool to us was that relationship we have with the Weather Forecast Office in the southern region to be able to get that accurate, timely information. So that relationship, I cannot stress to you how important that is to emergency management. And to be able to take the science of weather and interpret that into what decision makers need to know at the local level to make those key decisions. A little bit of Harvey by the number, as you saw from Louis' slides, significant rainfall in 7 days near Houston. The duration of the storm itself over Texas. Harvey lasted 117 hours over land, significant amount of time for that storm to be over the state of Texas. The total geographic area impacted in Texas was over 41,000 square miles. That's similar to the size of Delaware, Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. So Harvey in itself in the state of Texas was a significant event for FEMA as a whole. And we'll talk a little bit about what the rest of the hurricane season did. We had over 40 communities that evacuated and over 42,000 people that were sheltered. We still have over 10,800 households in our transitional sheltering assistance as of today that are in hotels across the state of Texas and Louisiana. As we got into responding and recovering from Harvey, then we had these other challenges. We had Irma, we had Maria, and we had the California wildfires. So FEMA is a fairly small organization, 4,000 permanent full-time employees. We have about 12,000 total if you look at our reservist and cadre of on-call employees. So it didn't take a lot for this to really stretch us thin as we started to respond to all of these various events. And it really caused us to look for a lot of innovation. So I'll go back once again to our relationship with the Weather Service and for the forecast that were telling us what Irma, what Maria, what Nate may potentially do, for us to be able to readjust our resources and our assets, and for us to be able to look out to say, we know this is going to exceed our capability from a manpower perspective. So we reached out to the federal family, to the DHS family, and brought in surge capacity for us, which was an exceptional force multiplier for us to be able to take care of the challenges of this unprecedented hurricane season. In addition, we had to look at our standard registration system. Our catastrophic event was something exceeding 1 million registrations. For the 2017 hurricane season and the wildfires, we had about 5 million registrations for FEMA assistance, which also taxed our inspection services. So we had to look at very, very innovative ways to be able to respond in this hurricane season. We talked a little bit about the cost of disasters. In this early stage of the game, Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Harvey are already in the top 10 of most costly disasters from the Disaster Relief Fund obligations. And this is still very, very early in the event. We haven't really got into the public, the category of public works and permanent work that we need to get into. So those numbers will continue to grow. But I think this really emphasizes all of us working together and how do we build resilient, look at land use, look at building structures, sound science that we build back more resilient. 4 months after Hurricane Harvey, just wanted to get a couple of things that we've done. But as Louis said earlier, it's still not enough. We still have a long way to go in the recovery period. We've got $1.1 billion in hazard mitigation grants that we're going to be providing through the state of Texas. We've put $504 million in expedited public assistance projects to take care of debris removal, because that really is one of the first things that we need to take care of, get the debris moved so people can get back to recovering in their communities. $7.6 billion paid out of the National Flood Insurance Program in advance payments and claims, $2.9 billion in the Small Business Administration loans, and $1.5 billion in housing and other disaster-related assistance in FEMA's Individual and Households Program. In my 30 years of working with FEMA, that's the most and the quickest I've ever seen us put money out. But once again, $12 billion in survivors' pockets, and we still have a long way to go in the recovery efforts. Moving forward in our continued recovery, we're focusing on housing, the infrastructure repairs, and mitigation. How do we build back better and smarter? We also have to look at, as we enter into the spring storm season, how do we concentrate on preparedness and other mitigation measures that individuals can take themselves. This graphic represents the National Flood Insurance policy coverage in Texas. The light blue shows less than 15% coverage, the tan and orange 15 to 50%, and then Aransas and Galveston counties are the only two counties that are over 50% of their jurisdictions have flood insurance. One of the common things we hear over and over again was, I wasn't required to have flood insurance. I don't live in a special flood hazard area. And as we move forward in our preparedness message, we need all of you to help us to say, you need flood insurance. I had a great, working with our counterparts in the state of Louisiana, a guy said, I finally figured out your flood codes on when I should have flood insurance. And I said, oh yeah, what's that? He said, if your driver's license says Louisiana, you ought to have flood insurance. And that's a public service announcement right there. Then we've got 144 days to the start of the 2018 hurricane season. So what can we do now to make sure that individuals are prepared for that? And I think that's really a key effort that we all need to be working on as we move forward. Some of the lessons learned as it relates to the National Weather Service, those relationships that were established in pre-event are critical to be able to make sure that you've worked with your local jurisdiction, vitally important to the success. Also planning, training, and exercising together at the local, state, federal, and private sector partners, vital to the response. We saw in the state of Texas, I think, a very robust response where you had neighbor helping neighbor, community helping community. That was a model for the rest of the country, and it really was because of those relationships and the practice and the exercising that had gone in to the pre-event activity. So we need to make sure we model that across the country. Administrator Long has put out his planning guidance for 2018, and it really hits some of those same themes. Number one is build a culture of preparedness. Number two, ready the nation for catastrophic disasters. All of you play a role in helping us be able to do that. And then thirdly, reduce the complexity of FEMA programs. We have a lot of partners that work with us, but it can be overwhelming to a local jurisdiction with all of the federal rules and regulations that come with that. So how do we reduce the complexity so the local government and individuals can recover more quickly? Another lesson learned was we've got to make sure, especially as people move into areas they're not familiar with, that look at the entire watershed. And just where the rain falls doesn't mean that's the only place that's going to flood. This is from the 2015 flooding in the Blanco River in Wimberley, Texas. You had significant rain in the red area, which was west of Wimberley, but Wimberley had significant flooding, the record flooding for that area. So we've got to make sure that people understand what are the threats and hazards to them. Coordination with weather forecasters, flood control structure operators, floodplain administrators, emergency management, elected officials, and the public is vitally critical. We've got to make sure that our message resonates with each one of those groups and that it's coordinated. So what a flood control structure operator does may affect an emergency manager for evacuation, which then can affect local elected officials and obviously affects the public. So we've got to make sure that we keep all of those in mind and bring the right people to the table as we look at our preparedness messaging and our exercise and coordination. A couple of the preparedness tools that we have out there, the FEMA application gives up to 5 locations where you can put in weather alerts, great partnership with the National Weather Service, ready.gov, floodsmarts.gov. We're going back and reworking that to make it even more helpful for individuals to look at when they need flood insurance and how they can acquire flood insurance, and then collaboration of messaging. And another lesson we learned in this event is the power of social media. And if we're not in that space, somebody else is going to be there. So we set up Facebook Live podcast. We set up social media monitoring where we could respond to things that were going on in communities so that if there was a false message out there, we could quickly make sure that we weren't putting individuals at greater peril from the recovery efforts from bad information. So I can't talk enough about the power of social media and how we need to make sure that we are a key player in social media. Thank you very much for what you do each and every day. I look forward to the panel discussion. I hope you have a great conference.